My parents said I'm selfish for keeping my grandfather's cabin instead of giving it to my sister. Then my estranged aunt dropped a truth bomb that destroyed our entire family. Hi everyone! Today's story will blow your mind, but really quick, if you enjoy this content, hit that subscribe button. Thanks to you, we can keep sharing the most shocking family stories. Let's jump in. Original post. I, 30M, need some perspective because I'm drowning in guilt and don't know if I'm being reasonable or just selfish. 2 years ago, my grandfather passed away and left me his vacation cabin in the mountains. It wasn't a complete surprise. I spent every summer there as a kid helping him with repairs and maintenance while my sister Emily, 28F, preferred staying in the city with our parents. Grandpa always said the cabin would be mine someday because I understood what it meant. The cabin isn't luxurious, but it's on 5 acres with lake access and has been in our family for 60 years. After inheriting it, I've spent weekends fixing it up, updating the plumbing, and making it livable year-round. It's become my sanctuary, the place where I decompress from my high-stress job in finance. Here's where it gets complicated. Last month, Emily announced she's getting married to her boyfriend Brandon. They've been together 3 years, and he seems like a good guy. My parents, Robert, 59M, and Patricia, 57F, immediately started talking about wedding venues, and Emily mentioned she'd always dreamed of a mountain wedding. That's when everything shifted. My mother called me last week with what she presented as a simple solution. She suggested I transfer the cabin to Emily as an early wedding gift. Her reasoning: Emily needs it more than I do since she's starting a family, I'm single with no prospects, I make good money and could buy my own place, and it would show I'm a supportive brother. When I hesitated, my father got on the phone. He didn't yell, he never does, but his disappointment was palpable. Michael, he said, family means sacrifice. Your sister has always struggled more than you. You've had every advantage. Don't you think it's time to even things out? The thing is, Emily hasn't struggled. She has a master's degree our parents paid for entirely, I took out loans for mine, works in marketing making decent money, and has had her rent subsidized by our parents for years. Meanwhile, I worked 3 jobs through college, graduated with $80,000 in debt, and have paid for everything myself since I was 18. But here's what's eating at me: they're not wrong that I'm doing well now. After years of grinding, I make good money. I could theoretically buy another cabin someday. Emily and Brandon are looking at houses, and the market is brutal. The cabin would solve their housing problem and give them the wedding venue she wants. My mother has called daily since our first conversation, each time escalating the emotional pressure. Yesterday, she said, I never thought I'd raised such a selfish son. Your grandfather would be ashamed to see you hoarding family property while your sister struggles to start her life. That hit hard. Would Grandpa be ashamed? He left it to me specifically, but he also always talked about family taking care of family. Emily called crying last night, saying she didn't want to cause problems but admitted she'd been hoping I might offer to share the cabin or let them use it for the wedding at least. She said Brandon's family is asking about venues, and she's embarrassed to admit her brother owns the perfect place but won't let them use it. I feel like I'm going insane. The cabin is the only thing I've ever had that was truly mine. I go there to escape, to think, to remember my grandfather. But maybe I am being selfish. Maybe family does mean giving up what you want for what others need. My parents have started telling extended family I'm being difficult, and I'm getting texts from aunts and uncles I barely hear from saying things like, family first, and don't let possessions divide you. I haven't slept in 3 days. Every time I think about giving up the cabin, I feel physically ill. But every time I think about keeping it, I feel like a monster who's destroying his family over property. Am I wrong here? Should I just give Emily the cabin to keep the peace and preserve our family? Or am I allowed to keep something that was left specifically to me? Update 1, 3 days later. I didn't expect this to blow up, but your responses gave me the courage to do something I should have done immediately. I called my Aunt Catherine, 54F, my father's sister. Catherine and my father have been estranged for about 15 years. Growing up, I was told it was because Catherine was difficult and couldn't let things go. My parents painted her as bitter and jealous of my father's success. We were discouraged from maintaining contact with her, though I secretly kept in touch through occasional emails and holiday cards. When I called Catherine and explained the situation, there was a long silence before she said, "Oh, Michael, it's happening again." She invited me to lunch the next day. What she told me reframed my entire childhood and explained so much about our family dynamics. 15 years ago, when my grandmother was dying, she wanted to leave her jewelry collection to Catherine. It wasn't extremely valuable, maybe $15,000 total, but it had tremendous sentimental value. Every piece had a story, a memory. Catherine had spent years learning about each item's history from my grandmother, while my father and Patricia had shown no interest. 2 weeks before my grandmother passed, my parents convinced her that Emily, then 13, should get the jewelry because it should go to the next generation. They argued Catherine was single, had no daughters, and it would be selfish to keep family heirlooms from her niece. They orchestrated a family intervention where various relatives pressured Catherine to do the right thing. Catherine refused initially, which led to my parents launching a campaign to turn the family against her. They called her selfish, materialistic, accused her of not caring about Emily's future. The pressure was so intense that my grandmother, on her deathbed and wanting family peace, changed her will. The jewelry was never about the jewelry, Catherine told me, her eyes filling with tears. It was about control. Your parents need to control the narrative, control the resources, control who gets what. And it's always in favor of what they want. She then revealed something that made my blood run cold. This pattern went back further. When Catherine was in college, she'd saved money from summer jobs to buy a used car. My parents convinced their parents that the money should go toward my father's tuition instead because education was more important than transportation. When Catherine received a small inheritance from a great-aunt, my parents pressured her to invest it in my father's first business venture, which failed within 6 months. Every time I had something that was mine, they found a way to make me feel selfish for keeping it, Catherine said. And they're masters at it, Michael. They know exactly which buttons to push, which relatives to enlist, how to make you feel like you're destroying the family by simply wanting to keep what's rightfully yours. I asked her about the jewelry, what happened to it. She laughed bitterly. Emily sold most of it within 2 years to buy designer handbags. The engagement ring from 1925 that my grandmother wore for 60 years? Gone for a Louis Vuitton purse that she used for 1 season. Catherine then pulled out her phone and showed me screenshots of text messages from various family members over the years, the same aunts and uncles now pressuring me. The language was eerily similar: family first, don't be selfish, think about what's best for everyone. They've created a family culture where having boundaries makes you the villain, Catherine explained. Where keeping what's yours is seen as taking from others. But notice how it only goes one way. When has Emily ever been asked to sacrifice for you? When have your parents ever given up something they wanted for your benefit? She was right. I couldn't think of a single instance. Every family resource had flowed toward Emily: the college fund that was supposedly for both of us but got depleted on her education, the car they bought her at 16 while I took the bus, the deposits they paid on her apartments while I lived in sketchy neighborhoods to afford rent. Catherine asked me a question that hit like a lightning bolt. Michael, what do you think happens after you give them the cabin? I hadn't thought that far ahead, but as soon as she asked, I knew. It wouldn't end. There would be something else. There would always be something else. Don't make my mistake, Catherine said, gripping my hand. I gave in to keep the peace, and there was no peace. Just more demands, more guilt, more manipulation. And once you've shown them that enough pressure will make you cave, they'll never stop applying it. I drove home in a daze, processing everything. That night, my mother called again. This time, armed with Catherine's perspective, I heard it differently. The subtle implications that I didn't deserve what I had. The rewriting of history to make Emily the perpetual victim. The mobilization of family pressure. It was all so calculated. I told my mother I needed time to think. She responded that Emily needed to book venues soon and my selfishness was causing unnecessary stress during what should be a happy time. She added that my father was so disappointed he could barely talk about it, and she hoped I could live with destroying my sister's wedding dreams. After we hung up, I called my grandfather's lawyer, the one who handled the estate. I asked if there had been any discussion about the cabin going to anyone else. He told me my grandfather had been very clear. The cabin was to go to me specifically. In fact, Grandpa had apparently said, "Michael understands what that place means. He'll take care of it. I'm not giving up the cabin. I know this means war with my family, but Catherine is right. If I give in now, it will never end." And Grandpa left it to me because he knew I'd preserve it, not sell it or use it as a bargaining chip. The battle is just beginning, but at least now I know what I'm really fighting against. Update 2, 2 weeks later. The family explosion I anticipated has arrived, but not in the way I expected. After my lunch with Catherine, I sent a group text to my parents and Emily. I've given this a lot of thought. The cabin was left to me by Grandpa, and I intend to honor his wishes by keeping it. However, Emily, I'd be happy to let you use it for your wedding weekend at no charge, and you're welcome to visit any time with advance notice. I thought this was a reasonable compromise. I was wrong. Within an hour, my father called, angrier than I'd ever heard him. But it wasn't the yelling that got to me, it was the calculated cruelty. "You know what? "I'm glad your grandfather isn't here to see what you've become," he said. "He thought you were different, special. But you're just selfish. All those summers you spent with him? He only invited you because Emily had better things to do. You were the consolation prize, Michael. And now you're using his senility against your own sister." Senility. My grandfather was sharp until his final day. The fact that my father would suggest otherwise to manipulate me told me everything I needed to know. Emily texted next, "I can't believe you're trying to make yourself look generous by allowing me to use what should be family property. Brandon's family is appalled that you would treat me this way. I told them we were close, but clearly I was wrong." Then came the extended family bombardment. Cousins, aunts, uncles, people who hadn't contacted me in years suddenly had strong opinions about my cruelty. My phone buzzed constantly with variations of the same message. I was selfish, Emily deserved better, family shares everything. But then something unexpected happened. Catherine, who had been quiet on social media for years, posted in our family Facebook group. Since everyone seems very concerned about family property and fairness, I thought I'd share some history. Over the years, Robert and Patricia have received $50,000 from my parents for Robert's business, $30,000 for their house down payment, Emily's full college tuition, $120,000, multiple vehicles, and countless other financial supports. Michael received student loans and a bus pass. The cabin was specifically left to Michael by their grandfather because he was the only one who helped maintain it. If we're talking about fairness, perhaps we should discuss why one grandchild has received over $200,000 in family support while the other was told to build character through struggle. The post was a nuclear bomb. Catherine had receipts, old emails, bank statements my grandmother had kept, photos of Emily getting her third car while I was working at a grocery store to pay for textbooks. My Uncle James, my father's brother, called me that evening. "Is this true about the money?" he asked. I confirmed it was. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Your father told us you got the same support Emily did. He said the cabin was making things uneven in your favor." It turned out my parents had been lying to everyone for years, creating a narrative where I was the privileged one who needed to be brought down to Emily's level. The truth was exactly opposite. More relatives started reaching out privately. My cousin Sarah told me about how my parents had convinced her mother to give Emily expensive graduation gifts while suggesting Michael prefers practical things, so I got gift cards to grocery stores. Another cousin, David, revealed that my parents had told everyone I was a workaholic by choice, who preferred to do things the hard way, when in reality, I was working multiple jobs because I had no other option. The facade was crumbling, but my parents doubled down. Patricia sent a family email addressing Catherine's malicious lies and attempt to divide the family. She claimed Catherine was bitter about ancient history and trying to manipulate me into cutting off my family. She painted herself and Robert as victims of a vindictive relative who couldn't let go of the past. Some family members bought it. Others didn't. The family was dividing into camps, and I hated that I was at the center of it. But Catherine called me with one more piece of advice. "They're going to escalate. When narcissists lose control of the narrative, they become desperate. Be ready." She was right. 3 days later, Emily showed up at my apartment unannounced, crying. But these weren't sad tears, they were angry ones. "How could you let Catherine do this to us?" she demanded. "She's turned everyone against Mom and Dad. They're devastated. Dad had to take time off work because he's so stressed." I asked her a simple question, "Emily, is what Catherine posted true or false?" She paused, then deflected, "That's not the point. The point is family doesn't air dirty laundry in public. But family does demand I give away my inheritance." Her mask slipped for just a moment. "You've always had it easier. You're the smart one, the successful one. This cabin was supposed to balance things out." There it was. The admission that this was never about need. It was about their perceived notion of fairness, where fairness meant Emily getting everything until they decided things were even. I told Emily to leave. She said if I didn't give her the cabin, she'd make sure I regretted it. I asked what that meant, and she smiled coldly. "Brandon's a lawyer. Grandpa had dementia at the end. Documents can be contested." I recorded that conversation on my phone, thank God. Because 2 days later, I was served with papers. Emily and my parents were contesting the will, claiming undue influence and diminished capacity. Catherine connected me with her lawyer, who laughed when he saw the filing. "Your grandfather's estate attorney is known for being meticulous. There's no way he processed a will without proper capacity documentation. This is intimidation, not litigation." He was right. My grandfather's lawyer had extensive medical documentation, including a cognitive evaluation done just months before the will was updated. The lawsuit was baseless, but it would cost me money to defend. That's when the extended family really turned. Suing over a grandparent's will was a bridge too far for even those who'd initially supported my parents. My Uncle James called my father directly and told him he was disgusted. My Aunt Margaret, who had been firmly in my parents' camp, called the lawsuit grave robbing. The lawsuit was dropped within a week, but the damage was done. The family was in ruins, all because I wouldn't give away what was rightfully mine. Update 3, 6 weeks later. The aftermath of the failed lawsuit has been revelatory. Emily's wedding planning has become a disaster. The family members who were excited to celebrate have been pulling back, uncomfortable with the drama. Brandon's family, who initially supported Emily, changed their tune when they learned about the lawsuit. Brandon's mother called the whole thing troubling and suggested they postpone the wedding to let things settle. But the real shock came from an unexpected source, Brandon himself. He reached out to me directly last week, asking to meet for coffee. Against my better judgment, I agreed. He looked exhausted. "I need you to know I didn't know about the lawsuit until Emily filed it," he said. "She told me you'd agreed to work something out, then blindsided me with papers to sign." He revealed that this wasn't the first time Emily had done something like this. Apparently, she'd had a falling out with her best friend 2 years ago over a disputed inheritance from the friend's grandmother. She'd convinced Brandon the friend was being unreasonable, but now he was seeing patterns. The way she talks about money, about what she deserves, about how unfair life has been to her. "I'm starting to realize it's not normal," he admitted. "My family's been asking questions I can't answer. Like why her parents pay her rent when she makes good money. Or why she has no savings despite minimal expenses." He asked me directly, "Has she always been like this?" I told him the truth. About the cars, the tuition, the constant financial support, the jewelry from Catherine that was sold for handbags. His face went pale. "She told me you got everything growing up. That your parents favored you and she had to fight for scraps." We talked for 2 hours. I showed him Catherine's Facebook post, the receipts, the documentation. By the end, he looked sick. "I need to think," he said, leaving. 3 days later, Emily called me screaming. Brandon had postponed the wedding indefinitely and was suggesting couples counseling. She blamed me, Catherine, everyone but herself. "You destroyed my life over a stupid cabin," she yelled. "No, Emily. You destroyed your own life by trying to steal my cabin." Meanwhile, my parents had gone into full damage control mode. They started telling people they'd been misunderstood, that they never wanted me to give up the cabin, just to share it. They claimed the lawsuit was Emily's idea alone and they tried to talk her out of it. But Catherine had one more bomb to drop. She'd been in contact with other family members who'd been pressured by my parents over the years. Our cousin Nicholas revealed that Robert had convinced him to invest in a sure-thing business venture that turned out to be a pyramid scheme. Our Aunt Jennifer shared how Patricia had guilt-tripped her into giving Emily her late mother's china set, which Emily sold within a year. The pattern was extensive and went back decades. My parents were serial manipulators who used family bonds as weapons to redistribute resources to themselves and their chosen child. The family reunion planned for this summer was cancelled. Too many people were no longer speaking to each other. My grandmother's sister, our great-aunt Helen, who at 92 was the family matriarch, called me last week. "Michael, I'm ashamed it took this long for people to see what's been happening," she said. "Your grandfather knew. That's why he was so specific about the cabin going to you. He saw how they treated you versus Emily. We all should have spoken up sooner." She then told me something that explained everything. "Your father was the same as a child. Always convincing his siblings to give him their things, always playing the victim when he didn't get his way. We thought he'd grow out of it. Instead, he found Patricia, who enabled and amplified it." The family pressure that had been crushing me for months evaporated almost overnight. My phone stopped ringing. The guilt-tripping texts ceased. My parents and Emily had lost their army of flying monkeys. But the silence from my immediate family was deafening. No apology, no acknowledgement, nothing. Just radio silence and, according to mutual acquaintances, a narrative where they were victims of a conspiracy between Catherine and me. Final update, 2 months later. I'm writing this from the cabin. It's been 4 months since this all started, and the dust has finally settled. The view from here is spectacular, not just the mountains and lake, but the clarity I've gained about my life and family. Brandon broke up with Emily 6 weeks ago. He reached out to thank me for being honest with him, saying the couple's counseling had revealed things that made him realize he was about to make a huge mistake. Emily, predictably, blamed me for poisoning him against her. My parents made one last-ditch effort a month ago. They showed up at my apartment uninvited, looking older and smaller than I remembered. Patricia cried, real tears this time, about how the family was destroyed. Robert said they just wanted their son back. For a moment, I wavered. These were my parents. Despite everything, part of me wanted to fix this, to have a family again. Then Robert said, if you just apologized to Emily and offered to share the cabin, we could put this all behind us. Even after everything, they couldn't help themselves. They were still trying to manipulate me into giving Emily what she wanted. I asked them to leave and told them not to contact me again. I've changed my phone number and email. I've blocked them on all social media. Catherine helped me find a therapist who specializes in family trauma and manipulation. It's been eye-opening to understand how abnormal my childhood was, how I was programmed from birth to sacrifice for Emily and feel guilty for any success I achieved. The extended family has slowly started to heal. Without my parents' toxic influence, cousins are reconnecting, aunts and uncles are rebuilding relationships. The family reunion has been rescheduled, with a notable exception: my parents and Emily aren't invited. Catherine and I have become close. She visits the cabin regularly, and we're making new memories to overlay the old ones. She brought photo albums last week, showing pictures of my grandfather and her working on the cabin together decades ago. In every photo, his joy is evident. This place meant everything to him. He'd be proud of you, Catherine told me. Not just for keeping the cabin, but for breaking the cycle. Last weekend, I hosted a small gathering at the cabin. Uncle James came with his family, Catherine brought her partner, and a few cousins I'd reconnected with joined us. We grilled, told stories about Grandpa, and watched the sunset over the lake. My cousin Sarah pulled me aside. You know what's different, she said. The anxiety is gone. That underlying tension at every family gathering, where we were all walking on eggshells to avoid setting off your parents. It's finally gone. She was right. For the first time in my life, I was with family without feeling like I had to perform, sacrifice, or justify my existence. I've also started dating someone, Amy, a woman I met through a hiking group. She knows the whole story and has been incredibly supportive. Last week, I brought her to the cabin for the first time. As we sat on the porch my grandfather built with his own hands, she said, I understand why you fought for this. It's not just property, it's peace. That's exactly what it is. Peace. I got a letter from Emily last week, forwarded through Catherine since she doesn't have my new address. It was 4 pages of accusations, manipulation, and guilt trips. But at the end, she revealed something telling. She and my parents are struggling financially. Without the family network they'd spent decades exploiting, they're having to live within their means for the first time. Emily is moving to a smaller apartment. My parents are talking about downsizing. The lavish lifestyle they maintained through family manipulation is crumbling. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not guilt, just nothing. They're strangers to me now, people I used to know who chose greed over love. I keep a photo on the mantel now, Grandpa and me, taken the last summer before he died. We're standing in front of the cabin, tools in hand, covered in sawdust and grinning. On the back, in his shaky handwriting, Michael, the keeper of memories and traditions. Take care of our place. I am, Grandpa. I'm taking care of it. The cabin has become more than just a weekend retreat. It's a symbol of boundaries held, manipulation resisted, and truth prevailing. Every time I drive up the mountain road and see it through the trees, I'm reminded that keeping what's rightfully yours isn't selfish, it's necessary. Catherine is coming up next weekend. We're going to plant a garden, something Grandpa always talked about but never got around to. We're thinking vegetables and wildflowers, life and beauty growing from ground that's truly ours. My phone is quiet now. No guilt trips, no manipulation, no family drama. Just peace. Beautiful, hard-won peace. To those who messaged me saying I'd regret losing my family, I didn't lose them. I freed myself from people who never saw me as family, just as a resource to be exploited. Real family doesn't demand you set yourself on fire to keep them warm. The cabin stands strong, just as Grandpa built it. And for the first time in my life, so do I. Some bridges are meant to be burned, especially when they only led to people who would pick your pockets while you crossed. The view is much clearer with the smoke cleared away. Thank you to everyone who helped me see what I couldn't see from inside the fog of manipulation. You potentially saved not just my cabin, but my sanity and future. The keeper of memories and traditions, that's what Grandpa called me. I understand now that some traditions need to be kept, and others, like exploitation disguised as family first, need to end. They ended with me. And that's the greatest inheritance my grandfather could have given me. the strength to say no, the clarity to see truth, and a cabin in the mountains where I finally learned what family really means. It means Catherine bringing homemade soup and staying up late talking about Grandpa. It means Uncle James teaching me to fly fish in the lake. It means cousins bringing their kids to experience the wilderness. It means Amy holding my hand as we watch the stars, understanding without judgment why this place had to remain mine. It doesn't mean giving everything away to those who would never give anything back. The cabin is mine. The peace is mine. The future is mine. And for the first time in 30 years, so is my life.